future if things do not improve for the Commanders. I mean, this defense is bottom 10 in points per game allowed, total yards per game allowed, yards per play allowed since the start of last season. They have the 6th worst defense in terms of yards allowed per game just this year, and the 5th worst run defense. They're allowing 7.5 yards per rush.
There he is. The man, the myth, the legend. I know I call a lot of people that on this show, but he definitely is. My coworker at CBS Sports, Jordan Dajani. What was it, 6 o'clock your time over there?
What's going on, Jeff Kerr? Yes, it's a lovely 6:23 a.m. in the Music City. Always excited to be on your show talking some football with you.
Were you out all night, by the way? I mean, you sound like you were.
I'm not to talk to sources about that. I'm not going to confirm or deny anything at this point. Very excited for the weekend in general. Also excited for Saturday and Sunday. As you can see, I'm repping my Vols hat. Big game against Florida this weekend. I'm making my trek to Knoxville later this afternoon, so very excited. Big weekend.
What do you got, a 3-hour drive to Knoxville from Nashville?
Yeah, 3 at the most. It's nothing too bad, and you also switch time zones, so you lose kind of an hour going from Central to Eastern, but on the way back, it's nice because you lose an hour, or you gained an hour, I guess I should say. So, yeah, it's not that bad of a drive. I'm excited for it. I went to school there, so, yeah, a lot of excitement this weekend.
Yeah, I'm the same way with Penn State, right? It's a 3-hour drive from where I am. I can pull it off in a day. I still can't believe I do it and still find a way to live blog and do everything I need to do for CBS. But I brought you on this week for one reason only. There's a Eagles-Commanders game on Sunday, which is pretty insane considering Carson Wentz plays the Eagles for the first time. The Commanders actually look like a decent football team. Just what have been your thoughts on Washington after 2 weeks of the season?
You know, the offense looks really refreshed, which is not something that I anticipated. And Carson Wentz has been playing some decent ball. But then again, he has some good weapons to work with. And I think you've been talking about it with Antonio Gibson, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel's back. Everyone knows what Terry McLaurin is about. So, you know, I wrote an article for CBSSports.com yesterday looking at that the Lions and the Commanders had the 2 most explosive offenses leaving week 2. Can you believe it? That's right. They've been responsible for 11 plays, I think, of at least 20 yards apiece. And that's ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers, who have 10 apiece at 3rd and 4th in that ranking. So that shows you that they're racking up yards at least, which is a good thing. And I think it's something that probably not every Washington Commanders anticipated with the Carson Wentz signing. That was obviously a very polarizing decision by this front office. But so far through 2 weeks, you have to like what Carson Wentz has done.
Exactly. And I feel like for the first time in Carson Wentz's career, he has decent players to throw to. Not discrediting what Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith and those guys did in 2017, but this is just a completely different level. Jahan Dotson looks like he's going to be an absolute stud in this league.
Absolutely. And I know you like that kid because he played for your favorite college team. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, Wentz has thrown for 650 yards through 2 games, which ranks 2nd between future MVP Tua Tagovailoa, who's thrown for 739 yards. So you have to really like what Wentz has done. But when it comes to the Commanders and my other thoughts, obviously there's major cause for concern when it comes to the other side of the ball in the defense. We're talking about depth at linebacker, at cornerback, and just the overall play of those position groups. And now we have reason for concern along the offensive line as well. A unit who did not play well against the Detroit Lions this past Sunday, gave up some bad sacks. Carson Wentz was really having to work hard behind that lackluster protection. Now you lose your center and Chase Rouillet for at least a few weeks, maybe for more than that. So, yeah, there's cause for concern when it comes to a lot of the other parts of the Commanders apart from the quarterback.
Yeah, and I thought Charles Loma and Sam Cosmi did a pretty good job against Jacksonville week 1, and we see what Jacksonville's defense has been able to do for 2 weeks. But basically, Aaron Glenn dialed up the same blitz packages he did against the Eagles in week 2, and they got home because Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. He just can't get out of that. And I think you saw the big difference there between what the Eagles have on the offensive line and what Washington has on the offensive line, which leads me to John Gannon has to actually blitz, right?
Oh, 100%. You absolutely have to if you want to get in the win column in week 3.
Yeah, that's the thing with Washington. It's a very polarizing team, like you said. I really like that offense. I think Carson Wentz has done more than enough to get that team to 1-1. But you're right. If you asked me to name Washington's linebackers right now, I would probably say John Bostic to start, which is really, really bad considering they have a former first-round pick playing linebacker right now.
Yeah, it's Cole Holcomb, who I'm a big fan of. That's a guy who Jay Gruden loved. Jay Gruden watched him play at UNC. He's a tackle monster, but he's not exactly that versatile piece who can kind of step up and man or zone coverage, but he's a guy who can hunt you down in the run game. And then you got a former first-round pick in Jamin Davis, who has flashed at times, but at the same time, he hasn't exactly played like a first-round pick. And we don't even know exactly where he's going to fit best. Is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he a middle linebacker, inside backer? So, yeah, there's major problems when it comes to that linebacking core for Washington, and that's been an issue for years.
My issue with Washington, too, is I think Jack Del Rio is a good defensive mind, but I feel like his time as a defensive coordinator, I want to say it's a little over the hill. I feel like their defense is kind of behind the times a bit. Like, they really don't care about linebacker there for some reason. Their linebacker. I've never seen linebackers that are so bad at pass coverage in my life. And keep in mind, there's a lot of bad pass covering linebackers in the NFL, but Washington, it just seems like you can throw any 5 to 10 yard pass off them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a good observation by you. And I think it goes into some schematics about it, but I think it also goes into some of the skill sets of the linebackers as well. These are guys who are not perceived to be, good in pass coverage as well. So it's kind of the perfect storm of mediocrity when it comes to that linebacking core and stopping the pass. But when you talk about the defensive coordinator, I think he could be on the chopping block if we move forward a couple weeks in the future, if things do not improve for the Commanders. I mean, this defense is bottom 10 in points per game allowed, total yards per game allowed, yards per play allowed since the start of last season. They have the 6th worst defense in terms of yards allowed per game just this year, and the 5th worst run defense. They're allowing 7.5 yards per rush, which is actually worse than the NFL, and not a stat I want to be rattling off to you with the Philadelphia Eagles coming to town.
This is what concerns me about Washington, right? I thought Chase Young was going to be this huge difference maker. And granted, he can't come back to week 5 at the earliest, but I still thought they'd survive with a Montez Sweat, with Jonathan Allen, with a Deron Payne. It just feels like their front four just isn't good enough. And I know Casey Tuhill's out too, by the way.
I mean, yeah, I think this has been a subject of conversation for the past couple of years, really, because Chase Young's rookie season, that's when Washington proved that they had the best defensive line in the NFL. And it made what was truly a lackluster secondary on paper the number 2 pass defense in the NFL. And we haven't seen that kind of production from that front four ever since then. And we can talk about Chase Young because he's obviously the headliner, right? The defensive player of the year. We started seeing OCs and running backs chip him off the edge, and it really affected his play. It led to Ron Rivera having to call him out in the middle of last year, and then he went and tore his ACL, which, of course, was very unfortunate. And he's obviously going to be the headliner, but you brought it up. There's plenty of other notable names on that defensive front, and it seems like they're not getting home as much as they have in the past, which overall has been affecting this defense as a whole and this team as a whole.
Before the season started, I wrote about coaches on the hot seat for CBS, and I hated to do it, but I kind of had to. Ron Rivera, he's had 2 losing seasons there. Yes, he did make the playoffs the first year, but as we all know, that was the year the NFC East was god-awful, and I figured if they have a losing season again with everything that's going on, he might be on the chopping block, but I don't know, Jordan. It just feels like no matter what right now, his job's safe in Washington.
I have no idea what to make of that, and I have no problem with you including him on that list because obviously the Commanders are not one of the elite teams in the NFL, and anytime you're saying that about your own club, your head coach could be on the chopping block, especially if it's a guy who's been there for several years. The issue with Ron Rivera, as you mentioned, is that he's not just a head coach for this franchise. He really is a member of the front office. When they made this hire, they gave the keys to the entire car to Ron Rivera, right? He's making a lot of decisions head coaches don't make in that front office, and he really is on the forefront of guiding this team and this franchise through this rebuild, through this renaming, through everything, all the problems that they're dealing with off the field as well, which is why it's hard for me to come out and straight up say, yes, Ron Rivera is on the hot seat and he's going to be looking for work if things don't improve. I can't say that because his role with this Washington franchise is very different compared to a Nick Sirianni, compared to a Mike Vrabel or something like that.
It's funny, too, because when Ron Rivera was hired, that was 2 names ago. everything's kind of changed there for that franchise. I mean, I haven't. It's weird too because when you think of Washington, you think of dysfunction. But overall, if you're taking Dan Snyder out of the equation, which is hard to do. But when you put, Jason Wright, Ron Rivera, it just feels like from a football standpoint, there actually is some continuity there, and it feels like they are getting on the right track.
I would say so overall. I would say that everything has not been perfect. I don't think that, there's been some misses in draft picks. There's been some misses in free agency. There's been some problems that have been problems for several years. I mean, we're talking about the linebacker spot. That hasn't been improved. But overall, I would agree with that statement, right? That things seem like they're on the right track. They finally decided on their new name, and now we're going to march forward. Now we have a prospective franchise signal caller, TBD on that. But things are definitely seem to be on the right track. I just want to see how the rest of this first half of the regular season goes, because then we'll have more clarity when it comes to job security, when it comes to scheme, when it comes to what the ceiling of this team could be.
Do you like the Commander's name?
No.
What did you
Not
want?
at all.
Yeah, what did you want it to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually wanted to stay with the Washington football team because, listen, their whole Redskins moniker was very ingrained in my family, right? It's the logo and everything was a big deal for my dad's side of the family. When I was growing up, that was like the biggest thing. That's what brought us all together. So when obviously they stepped away from the name, which is fine, and I understand why, they didn't replace it, right? They were just the Washington football team, the Washington NFL team that's up there in Virginia and plays in Landover, Maryland. I thought that was kind of cool and kind of different. People laughed at it like LeBron James, but I thought it was unique and I thought it was cool. It was almost kind of like a soccer club name. And in a way, they didn't replace it, right? And I was still cool with that. But the day they renamed it the Commanders, I think a lot of people felt a part of their fandom die, including myself. And maybe it's something they didn't anticipate because that's when they truly did replace the name with something else. Now it looks like they're an expansion team as opposed to that old Washington NFL franchise of old.
That's what I liked about when they decided to become the football team. I actually embraced it too. I just like how they changed basically the Redskins logo to a W. They put numbers on the helmets. It felt like an old school team, and they kept, they didn't keep HTTR, obviously, but they still play, the band's still there. It's still, everything just kind of felt the same. And you're like, I actually like the Commanders uniforms, by the way. But besides that, I'm not crazy about the team name. And Philly, we made the joke, oh, they're the commies. They're the commies. They're not the Commanders. And I don't know. It just felt like it was a big swing and a miss by Washington there.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, the other thing is, if I was going to be able to pick a name for a new team, let's say the Tennessee Titans were changing their name, I want to go out on a limb, right? I want to pick something very unique. And I understand there was copyright issues with like the Red Tails and a couple of other different names, but I'd be going out on a limb and trying to choose something very unique. Not something like Commanders or Warriors or Wolves or something like that. I'm going out on a limb to try to get this fan base juiced and excited, not pick the most stereotypical name that's been in Madden NFL PlayStation games for the past 10 years.
Which we all know hasn't changed, by the way. So overall, there's going to be a lot of Eagles fans coming down the FedEx Field. I don't think I've talked to so many Eagles fans who are going down there. So I'm kind of curious to see how everything pans out Sunday. But last time I was at an NFL game as a fan, it was FedEx Field, and it was basically how I remembered it. It was a dump. The press area is terrible. The parking's terrible. Everything's been. When are they getting a new stadium, if they're getting one?
I feel like we've been talking about this ever since I've been covering the NFL professionally. So I don't know what's going on with that, and I don't know what's going to come with that. I did write a couple of articles. There's been some developments just over the past year with Washington looking at buying different plots of land. And there was some that was south of Washington, D.C. There was some that was in D.C. They're trying to figure out. It doesn't sound like there's any kind of clarity when it comes to a potential landing spot in terms of location, which I think is a really big holdup. Plus, you have all these outfield issues that a lot of people in politics and the congressmen and congresswomen are continuing to talk about. It's kind of hard to raise funding when the Washington NFL franchise is going through what they're going through off the field and having to testify between a congressional oversight committee, right? So we don't have any clarity on that just yet. I know they're trying to move on at least. But at the very least, I think that they'll try to build a new stadium. It could be in the same exact plot. But yeah, I don't have any updates on that. Not really sure.
It's crazy too, because I remember when FedEx Field was the cream of the crop, the crown jewel when it first came out. Everybody thought it was a great idea, and it'd be a great college stadium. To me, the issue is just the location. It's in the middle of nowhere. The parking situation's terrible. You thought that would improve, but overall, though, where do you want this stadium to go? Do you want Virginia, DC?
Yeah, I think that's, my dad's like been a big old, Washington fan for a long time now. And I think that going to DC would be really cool. And DC is obviously a city not on the rise. It's obviously very established, but it's very different compared to what it was, let's say, 10 years ago. And I think there's a lot of different cool aspects about it. And bringing this new rebranded franchise back into that spot, I think could really allow it to thrive and build off of the energy and also the fan base that's been established there for quite some time.
It's a shame. I don't think there's enough room where the Nationals play, the Navy Yard, DC, because that seems like the happening spot right now.
Yeah, Navy Yard sweet. I went there for a bachelor trip a couple of years ago. Went and saw a Nats game. It was awesome. A great little restaurants and brunch spots and all that. A place like that would be really sweet to host an NFL team because, like I said, I think it would really allow it to thrive in more ways than one. But spacing is going to be the issue. Funding's still going to be an issue. And that's why I think, and I want to say this too, I talked about Washington looking to go a little bit south, and it almost seems like they're buying a plot of land, not only for a stadium, but for shops, for living arrangements like apartments. And that's what we're seeing multiple NFL teams do. I don't know if people have realized that. Look at what the Chicago Bears are doing as well. They're kind of creating these little hubs that will surround their NFL stadium as opposed just to the stadium itself. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, because while Washington didn't go out on a limb for their new rebranded name, they may do that for their stadium in terms of a location and what will be established and built around that.
You're right. You are seeing teams start to do that. And I think Carolina got this right almost 30 years ago now, building Bank of America Stadium, where they build it. It's in Uptown. They built the baseball stadium around. There's so many local businesses there. It's a great place to host an NFL game. I really like how you could walk in the city and walk there. It's a nice city, nice environment. Everybody's friendly down there. And I think that's what Washington's trying to do. I think a lot of people are trying to do. Like, Philly's unique. Philly's in a sports complex. And that's just their identity. Now, Sixers are trying to change that, obviously. But overall, though, I just feel like this is the one thing Washington has to get right, because MetLife Stadium, the Giants didn't get right. Cowboys Stadium, it's $1 billion empire, but apparently traffic down there is terrible. I don't know. I've never been there. And Philadelphia is Philadelphia. So, look, I feel like this could really change the franchise around if they're able to get it done.
No, 100%. And that's a great point because, like you said, this isn't the Eagles moving homes. This isn't the Titans moving homes. This is a team that feels like an expansion club moving home. So they really have to reestablish themselves and reestablish their fan base and kind of bring back those former fans who are a little bit hesitant to jump onto this new Commanders bandwagon. That's how important it is. So, and maybe that's something that they kind of understand behind the scenes. And that's why we haven't seen as much movement, because there's been so much other movement when it comes to other matters of the front office and the team as a whole.
From an outsider's perspective, what have been your thoughts on Jalen Hurts?
Better than I thought. I'm certainly not a Jalen Hurts detractor. I think the biggest thing for me was I wanted to see him more evolve as more of a pure passer. We all know that he's one of the best quarterbacks in terms of using his feet in the NFL. And I thought the next step was him to be obviously more of a pure passer. And I think we've seen that. And I think a lot of people predicted that, obviously with the weapons that the Eagles now have in place with guys like A.J. Brown. I thought the Minnesota Vikings did make life a little bit easy on him at times with some of their coverages. I was kind of surprised by that. The middle of the field was open. It really allowed an easy pass to one of those talented wide receivers, and then they could use their own talent to kind of make guys miss, go up the sideline, as we've seen with A.J. Brown a couple of times in reviewing the film. But Jalen Hurts, I think, is clearly making advancements, improvements when it comes to his passing ability. And it really does intrigue me, because if he is going to do that, and if he's going to become a legitimate passer, then there's no reason the Eagles can't be legitimate contenders. So the Philadelphia Eagles are absolutely one of those teams that I have my eye on moving forward as we march into week 3.
AJ Brown, I mean, you've seen him the past 3 years. You know how good he is, and you're seeing the Titans offense without him. How much of a difference maker is he truly?
Wow, I'll say this. We haven't even seen him hit a home run yet, right? I mean, we haven't seen those 80-yard touchdowns from Jalen Hurts just yet. And I think that's almost a positive. Like, when I was watching A.J. Brown against Minnesota, he made this play where he kind of ran a 7-yard in route, got the ball, turned and faced upfield, and he was patient with how he ran the ball, right? He saw there was a blocker out to his left. He kind of scurried around to the left side, ran it up for a first down. That was a really patient A.J. Brown. And I feel like we didn't always see that with the Tennessee Titans, for better or for worse. He was obviously a home run hitter and a very talented wideout. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of A.J. Brown with the Philadelphia Eagles. It feels a little bit different. It feels like he is more of that physical specimen that he appeared to be at times with the Tennessee Titans. Now, with Tennessee, he was always that reliable number one that was going to beat teams deep. I think we're seeing him do even a little bit more in the short game with the Philadelphia Eagles.
What happened down there? Because he hasn't been an issue. He's even joked with me a couple times about when I try to ask him some questions about Tennessee. He's like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to get a reaction here. But it just feels like he's ready to move on from that chapter in his life. But overall, though, it's a very weird situation how he's in Philadelphia.
I'm glad you actually asked me, because I think that I could offer some insight for some of your Eagles viewers. Now, this is not knowledge from people that I've talked to, but this is me connecting the dots from 3 different pictures. The A.J. Brown, his representatives, and the Tennessee Titans, when it came to these extension talks, were all on different pages. I don't think that that middle group of A.J. Brown's representatives, and this is just my theory, and this is what it seems like to me, they were not clearly communicating to A.J. Brown or the Tennessee Titans the other's wishes. Something went completely awry when it came to those contract negotiations, because we saw A.J. Brown come out to the press, and we saw the Tennessee Titans also talk to reporters about what happened. Well, A.J. Brown said this, well, we never got that number. His representatives never gave us that number. A.J. Brown said he didn't ask for a trade when it was reported that he actually did ask for a trade. It felt like nobody was on the same page, because I know the Tennessee Titans absolutely wanted to keep him in the fold. And you can go back on draft night and see what Mike Vrabel did when he talked to John Robinson in the draft room and they made that decision to trade him. He was pissed. So I know the Titans wanted to keep A.J. Brown in the fold, but something went absolutely wrong in those contract negotiations. And it didn't feel like A.J. Brown talking to the Titans. It felt like A.J. Brown talking to his representatives, who then were talking to the Titans, but they were also saying things to the Titans they weren't saying to A.J. Brown. That's what it felt like to me, and everything absolutely fell apart.
Yeah, it's weird, too, because, again, when you ask him about it, he doesn't really want to talk about it. It just feels like there was a big miscommunication there. He doesn't want to rip his former franchise, but he also kind of wants to make him pay for ultimately getting rid of him. It almost made it sound like, at least from our vantage point, that Tennessee may have to be a problem guy, and he really isn't that.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. A.J. Brown was never a problem guy during his time in Tennessee. And here's the other thing, too. He doesn't have to say anything to make the Titans pay, right? He just has to go out there and ball on Sundays and Mondays, Sunday nights, whenever he's playing. And because all the Titans fans now, especially since they're 0-2, all they can talk about is A.J. Brown, right? What would this offense look like with A.J. Brown in the fold? We should have paid him. Titans fans are obviously apoplectic at this point in the season. So A.J. Brown doesn't have to say anything. I think it's best for him not to say anything. He just has to go out there and continue to ball out.
Yeah, and obviously the Eagles are going to play the Titans this year. It's in Philadelphia, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a story. But yeah, that is funny how that's all Nashville's talking about. Like, do you really think they would be 1-1 with A.J. Brown? I don't know, because I felt like the Giants loss really was a microcosm of what's going to happen to them this year.
It's funny because people may say I'm a biased Titans fan, which I'm not. But I think if A.J. Brown was in the fold this year, that this team, they might have a win in their first 2 weeks, but I think they were due to take a step backwards. I think the play calling's been atrocious. We have disgusting injuries all over defense. The secondary is, in my opinion, one of the most least experienced, maybe the worst in the NFL as well. Clearly exposed by Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills earlier on Monday night. So the Tennessee Titans were definitely poised to take a step backwards. You go back and look at free agency, and I'll ask you, who was their biggest addition? You probably can't name anybody. I don't remember who they signed in free agency because it wasn't anybody notable. I think the Titans obviously were poised to take a step backwards from that #1 seed in the AFC ways. And even if they had A.J. Brown, I think that it still would be tough to be a legitimate contender. I don't think that Titans team is that anymore. I think they would win the division with A.J. Brown. But in terms of competing for a Super Bowl and getting that first round bye in the postseason, I don't think it would have happened.
Do you think the Titans penny pinched when it came to paying A.J. Brown?
A little bit. The number that A.J. Brown threw out there was incorrect and not true. But at the same time, the Titans were not willing to do well, actually, I got to pause there because I don't even know that. According to reports, the number that A.J. Brown was asking for was much higher than what he got from Philly. So I think the biggest question when it comes to that fallout is the contract that he got from the Philadelphia Eagles. Is that something, if he asked the Tennessee Titans, would they have given him? And that's something I truly don't know the answer to. Maybe it was no. So that's why I say maybe a little bit, because it sounded like the initial offers that were being given from the Titans were making A.J. Brown upset. That's at least what I'm reading the tea leaves about. So when you ask me if they were penny pinching, I think I have to lean towards yes, because they weren't in an amazing cap situation. They have a couple of other really big extensions coming up, namely Jeffrey Simmons as well. So they were probably penny pinching a little bit, but at the same time, I know that they wanted to keep A.J. Brown in the fold.
Finally, before I let you go, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, obviously, we know the connection there. I mean, I remember I reported that week, Jalen Hurts is at A.J. Brown's daughter's birthday party. So when he was traded to the Eagles, it wasn't really a surprise to me, just based on the friendship there. But how good do you think this connection can be?
I think it could be elite. I think it could be very, very good. I think they could be a dynamic duo. I think it relies on two things, though. I think it relies on hinges on A.J. Brown remaining healthy, which is something he struggled with over the past couple of seasons. And also, as I'm talking about, Jalen Hurts evolving into that true passer. And again, we've seen the early makings of that, not only with his performance on the field, but also in the play calling of Nick Sirianni and that Eagles coaching staff, right? They're throwing the ball a little bit more now, as they should, with guys like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who A.J. Brown says could be two legitimate #1 wide receivers. So there's a lot of reason to be optimistic for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Who do you got Sunday, Eagles or Commanders?
I got the Eagles. In fact, I'm dropping my gambling column for CBSSports.com tomorrow morning. And yes, the Eagles -6.5 over the Washington Commanders will be a best bet of mine. Couple of reasons. I brought up the Washington defense has been really struggling. And obviously Philly's really good on the ground, which is something Washington struggles to stop. On the flip side, Carson Wentz has been playing some decent ball. There's going to be that revenge game factor, excitement. But his offensive line is really banged up now. We don't even know who's going to be able to play center. So there's reason to be really high on Philly. That stadium is going to be rocking for the Eagles, not the Commanders. So I'm leaning towards Philly when it comes to Sunday.
Jordan, I think it's always a good conversation when I just went 30 minutes and then barely got it in a gambling question for you. Next time I have you on, we're going to have to talk some gambling. Well, I'll obviously have you on Good Morning NFC East. No one knows the NFC East just as good as Jordan Dajani. I'll say that.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It was fun this morning.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for coming on, Jordan.